When I interviewed you in whenever it was in the early 90s, one thing that you really impressed on me was the fact that you hated being put in a box. That you actually said, whenever people think I'm going to do something, I'm going to do the opposite. In the nearly 20 years later, is that the same way that you're thinking now?
A little, yeah, probably, but I'm probably a little bit more polite about it and probably a little less bloody-minded. I'll kind of play with people's expectations, but when they come up and kind of question what I'm doing, instead of telling them to fuck off, I'll probably politely explain my reasons. You know what I mean? I was a bit defensive back then. I just started, and it was that classic. I felt like a bit of an imposter at times, so. And I thought I was going to be found out. I thought it was a case of Emperor's New Clothes. So I was very kind of, I was on the attack all the time, and sort of kind of pushing people away because I was very insecure because it just kind of happened sort of overnight, and I just thought, blimey, that was kind of simple. I'm going to be found out. People are going to go, oh, you're just an ex-bricklayer. You know what I mean? And then, so I retreated behind a wall of behind a wall of kind of narkiness, you know, and a bit offish with people, you know, because I thought, well, if I push people away, they can't get in and find out that I'm an imposter.
Well,
but I don't feel like that anymore.
I never found that when you were very friendly, but even within that kind of year zero of rave times, you had a lot of history of, you know, liking a lot of decent music.
Well, that's it, because it wasn't year zero to me, because I'd been brought up, you know, a lot of post-punk stuff and a lot of early electronic music. It was just the kind of stepping stone to techno. So it wasn't year zero. I wasn't just listening to kind of rock and roll and rock music, and then suddenly electronic dance music came along. I'd been listening to electronic dance music from the late 70s. You know, and I used to go to like a lot of sort of soul things, you know, and disco events. Even when I was a little punk rocker, I had that sort of dilemma. It's like, oh, you know, you're not supposed to like disco if you're into punk, but I loved it. So I loved dressing up, and if you went to soul things and disco things, that was like the only clubs you could go to and dress up and not get hassled. So I always loved disco. I always had that. I was a bit of a kind of confused punk soul boy. But then a lot of early punks were bored soul boys. A lot of that early punk look, like the peg trousers, plastic sandals, and my hair jumpers and stuff, was a kind of a soul boy thing. You know, the kind of trendier soul boy thing.
And there was always that dichotomy when you were a punk rocker in the late 70s, whether you you like the Sex Pistols, but at the same time you also like Chic.
But then the real, you know, it's only years later that you realise that the Clash and the Pistols, they were into their disco and their dance stuff as well. It was only like a couple of years. It was only kind of as punk progressed and like people started to write their own rules about what they thought it was. You know what I mean? You know, Lydon was into Can and all sorts of like electronic stuff. So and the Clash were into their disco stuff. You know, as you know, as their career develops, that influence sort of came back, and they were unashamed to kind of admit that they were into that sort of thing.
So have you been to see Pill on this last tour?
No, I was a bit reticent. I didn't know. Sometimes, you know, when you go and see those things, I don't want to be left with a bad memory. Apparently it's really good, and it's always a risk when you see those kind of reunion things. They're either really good or really terrible. And I was in two minds, you know, and it didn't have Joe Wobble. If it had had Joe Wobble playing, I might have gone along. But apparently it's really good. I know people that went and they said it was really good.
Yeah. Well, I was in touch with Wobble before. I happened to interview him, and his big thing was that like Lydon had been in touch.
Yeah.
And he'd said that, you know, we want to do this thing, and Wobble said the only way I'm interested is if we do new material.
All right. Okay.
And Lydon said, well, yeah, let's do it. And then it turned out Wobble's people got in touch with Lydon's people, and business was just not happening.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah,
but
it's
I mean,
a shame.
Yeah, I mean, but that stuff, you know, like Metal Box, it still sounds like it comes from the future. So, you know, oh yeah, it'd be old stuff, but it's still current. It's not like, you know, you're rehashing anything. I don't think. You know, it's strange.
Over the last week or so, I've seen a couple of things like these kind of missives by DJ Shadow on his website, and also Kurt Giorgio. And it was interesting because they kind of talked about the same thing but in a different way. DJ Shadow was kind of talking about the internet was a very negative thing because he doesn't want to be like Radiohead giving their albums away for free. And DJ Shadow kind of characterised the whole internet thing as the fact that everyone's got access to making music, but the more music that people make, the less control. Exactly.
Yeah.
But Kurt Giorgio,
the punk thing was originally, you know, the whole thing about punk was anybody can do it, and it's even easier now. But during punk, you still had to go to a studio, and there were still things you had to go through. But now you can make it in your front room. But that's the thing. That's the price you pay. That's the price you pay for democracy. Sometimes, is that. You know, it's all about lowest common denominator, and I love it that everyone can make music, but everyone's in a hurry to make music, and they don't let things develop. That's the thing that I don't like about it. Yeah, it's great that everybody makes music, but they're always in a rush. They're too excited too early. They make a tune and just think, oh, I've got to get it out.
As a music producer that's been in the game for like 20 years and stuff. The thing that Shadow was going on about was the fact that people, you put, as a producer, you put music out, whether that be physical vinyl or whether it be you know, MP3s, and people copy it. It's a lot easier to copy an MP3 than it is to copy vinyl.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of bootlegging thing is how do you find that kind of common ground where you're kind of dealing with the internet, you're engaging with it?
Well, I'm lucky. I mean, I very rarely use a computer outside the studio, so I think I've only ever bought 2 things off eBay, and I'll use it. It's great. It's like having the world's best encyclopedia in your front room. It's like any technology or anything new. You know, you just got to know how to use it. And I was lucky enough to live nearly 40 years without it. So it's, you know, I don't get sucked into it. If I was a young kid and it was like a shiny new toy, it might be different. But to me, I just use it as a tool. It's a great tool for information. And I don't follow links. If I want to find out something, then I'll go and find it out. But I don't buy records. I like making things hard for myself. I don't buy records off eBay because it's too easy. You know, and if you've had to search, you know, I'd rather spend 2 years hunting down a record than 2 minutes tapping a keyboard, because when I actually get that record, it's been a 2-year trip or 3 years or whatever, and I think it's imbued with much more magic because I've made an effort. I've gone through. I've done it the difficult way.
How much is
it's
that?
Like climbing a mountain without proper oxygen.
How much is that to do with the physicality of getting a record?
Well, it's still physical when you get it. You still get records, but it's the search. You know what I mean? It's the journey, and it's the people you meet on that search, and the memories that you have. You know, when you play that record, you've got 2 years of memories associated with that, searching that record, rather than 2 minutes of tapping a keyboard.
So tonight, just playing vinyl on one deck, how different is that to your usual gig? Do you kind of use Ableton and?
Oh, no, I still play. I play vinyl and
just
CDs.
Vinyl.
Well, no, half and half. I don't play MP3s because they sound shit in a different way. But I don't think about how people are going to consume it. You know, I'm not. Everyone thinks I'm this kind of Luddite, anti-modern kind of person, but I'm not. It's just I don't get blinded by new technology. It's not the wonder drug that everyone thinks it is. You know, if that's how you want to listen to music, fair enough. You know, it's a bit of a shame, but it's you know, it's no point in kind of. You just come across as like a bit of a grumpy old man if you start going on about how the kids don't listen to music properly. You know what I mean? It's still magic. They're still getting an enjoyment off it. You know, it's a bit curmudgeonly to go, oh yes, the mid range is a bit flat. You know what I mean? That's not what they're listening to.